Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Rutledge. I'm a radiation oncologist and have a great passion for support groups and so on. And we're here today with another physician, Dr. Janice Wright, who's an integrative cancer specialist. And we're going to have really a very in-depth conversation about transformational medicine and how we can work with our childhood traumas, our conditioning when we get a cancer diagnosis. So really looking forward to meeting Janice and learning from the great center she's at, Inspire Health, and also with my wonderful friend, Dr. Timothy Walker, who is a psychotherapist and a great teacher based here in Halifax. Hello, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm good, Rob. It's good to be here with you and Janice tonight. And
I'm wondering if you can offer us some insight from your week, something that happened to you, something that inspired you.
well, I was had fortunate enough. I went to Newfoundland, St. John's, Newfoundland, this Thursday and Friday to teach meditation for clinicians, social workers mostly, who work in a women's shelter and women's support network. And they're fantastic people. I think the thing that struck me the most is that we landed in St. John's, Newfoundland, and the woman, I've never met her before in my life, she picks us up. It's about 8 o'clock, and we say that we haven't had breakfast. She says, come on over to my house, we'll make eggs before the program starts. And within 3 minutes, she was our best friend.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it just seems like in Newfoundland, that's what always happens. People are so friendly and so kind of just bubbling over with excitement. But you also recognize that their life is very hard, and they've suffered a lot, and there's a lot of people with trauma there. And the women that they work with are, off the streets and have had severe trauma in childhood, and just really calibrating how far they can go with these women, and a lot of discussion about that. And but the support workers that we were working with, and the social workers and the psychologists, were really grateful for the being able to have 2 days to practice mindfulness together. And it seemed like we were there for 3 weeks, 2 days.
Right, yeah, so much life and so much loving energy within these great spirits as well, and also just for
Yeah.
them to have an opportunity to regenerate their own batteries and to connect with what powers them forward and that living spirit. So, yeah, I just feel it's a huge blessing for me to work within the Cancer Center because there are so many great spirits that I work with, the therapists, the social workers, the other physicians, the nurses, they're all just angels in our midst. So it's really just a lovely, lovely place to be, great spirits. So wonderful. Tim, I'm wondering if you can offer us the opening prayer, however you want to say it, or setting the intention
Sure.
of this podcast.
Let's take an attention and do a little bit of meditation. So if we could find our seats and feel our body, and just feel your bum in the seat, and the feeling of the inner body, tuning into the current weather system of your inner experience, your inner weather, and just letting it be just as it is. Feeling our breath, recognizing that breath is life. Breath and life are interdependent. As we breathe into the belly and let go, we can feel the lower body rooted to the earth like a tree, solid foundation, grounded. Legs and lower body feeling gravity, feeling the earth. Then our spine reaches out of the pelvis and reaches up, and our head and shoulders reach to the sky. You can feel that sense of inspiration, open space, the cosmos above our head and shoulders, out into infinite space. That open space is really a metaphor for our open mind, possibilities of healing and transformation and change, creativity. Anything is possible. And then there's our good human heart, which brings those two together. The inspiration and the creativity and the heaven joining the earth of practical life. So we can tune into our heart and feel the tenderness and the vulnerability, the openness of that receiver and transmitter of the energy of love. As if we could breathe in and out through our hearts, begin to connect with that feeling of love and the tenderness in our heart. We can flash on someone that we love very much, our children, maybe a pet, maybe our grandmother who's long gone. We see their face and we send them love from our heart like light, like the sun rising in the morning. That ray of light touches their heart and they smile. And that smile makes us smile because sending love feels good. We can smile and send love. And it glows and it increases. And that love fills our bodies and radiates out of every hair pore of our body. And we realize that love is really flooding every cell of our body, bringing us a sense of wholeness and healing. We love ourselves just as we are in this very moment, without conditions. And that love radiates out and we can contemplate all the other people on the cancer journey, and all the people who suffer with chronic illness or pain or suffering. We can send them our light. We wish for them to be happy and to be free of suffering. In that context of sending loving kindness, we can tune into our heart for this moment, this very moment of our life, and set an intention here for our webcast and onward from there. Those watching and listening, always tuning in and learning to set an intention for the next phase of our life, being deliberate, so we can plant that seed in the fertile ground of loving kindness. The basic intention of how we want to proceed. We want to develop more compassion, more understanding, more patience. We plant that on our heart and we send it out in all directions. And we can let it go. Confident. Feeling our bodies, bum in the seat, and gently breathing into your soft belly. Enjoying the sensuality of the breath. When we're ready, we could open our eyes and just look out as if looking to the horizon, where the sea meets the sky, and open our minds to the space around us. Thank you.
Okay, we're still going to stop the webcast now. That's all we need for tonight, so thank you. I'm just in very good space, so thank you. I'm also super excited that I'm actually going to be seeing Janice, who I'm about to introduce, at Inspire Health. Inspire Health is really a pioneer and a world-class cancer integrative center based in Vancouver. It's actually supported by the provincial government there, and they have a number of excellent practitioners that work in 4 centers and through their online resources. And they offer many, many, many things, but including research updates. And I just really suggest people go and check out inspirehealth.org, Janice, or is it .ca?
.ca.
.ca is the Canadian version, inspirehealth.ca. So I just want to read part of Janice's bio that's on that website, but we're going to get to meet Janice and hear about her story, her journey as a physician and a specialist, integrative cancer specialist. So Janice graduated with a BSc in anatomy and then a master's in biology back in '91, went through medical school, and then ultimately joined Inspire Health in 1998. So almost 20 years of practice now. And quotes, she has a special interest in transformative medicine. Now that I find very interesting, because I've been trying to help people transform and heal at those different levels for many, many years. So we'll hear from that. I just want to say that Janice believes in using standard medicine and complementary modalities to support and encourage the body's innate capacity towards wholeness. So we're also describing here integrative care, which is the best from the medical system and what we can do to empower ourselves, body, mind, and spirit. So the integrative approach, she's a certified yoga instructor and practices meditation regularly. And this is key as well, believes passion and creativity are integral aspects of health and well-being. So that is very intriguing. And Janice, welcome to our podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's great. I want to bring you right back to the start of all that. Obviously, you were kind of a true scientist, a classic scientist through the late 80s, early 90s. When was the moment that you knew you wanted to be a physician or knew you wanted to work with people affected by cancer? Was there a story around that kind of sudden awakening within yourself and within your soul?
Thank you. Well, I knew from a very, very young age that I wanted to be a doctor, but there were no doctors in my family. And so I wasn't sure what was possible, but I was encouraged every step of the way by my parents and my teachers. And it was actually in high school that I fell in love with the human body. I'd grown up in a spiritual tradition, Christian spiritual tradition in my family, and so I'd always known about I had a felt sense of the spirit that animates the body, but then to fall in love with the physiology of the body itself was really exciting, and then I was just absolutely full steam ahead towards medical school at that point.
Yeah. Passionate about just the wonder, the incredible complexity of the human body as well. So, and that would definitely feed you right through medical school as well, because typically medical school is very physical medicine oriented. So you would have been like a fish swimming in water at that point, for certain.
Yes, and so through medical school, I was gifted with the opportunity to study at McMaster University, and they were one of the pioneers in the area of what they call problem-based learning. So we were working with a biopsychosocial approach in a small group setting. So right from the beginning of medical school, not only was I working with not just the concept of disease, but also how it was affecting the person on a emotional, spiritual, and community level. But I was also working with patients directly. I got to do an apprenticeship right from my 3rd month of medical school. So to be interacting with patients, I just got so inspired by their stories of survival and their curiosities and their pain and suffering, and where they found joy and where they found gratitude in the midst of it all. So there's always been quite that biopsychosocial spiritual mix for me.
Wow, yeah, that is a real blessing. I mean, I went to school at the University of Toronto that was definitely on the physical aspect, physical side of care and so on. So to have that through your formative years as a physician is just a wonderful, wonderful gift, no doubt about it. When did oncology kind of speak to you? When did you know that you wanted to work with people affected by cancer?
Oh yes, well I had spent an extra year in residency studying palliative care. So that's the care of people that are in a closer phase of dying. And of course, not all the patients that I worked with had cancer. However, working with people in that very poignant and vulnerable time of life, a time of, for many people, a time of questioning, a time of letting go, a time of surrender, and a time where, not always, but where deeper conversation and connection with one's own spirit and with others and with God or higher power, whoever one believes in, came towards the forefront in conversations that I was having. And I just knew I'd found my calling. I knew I'd found my own passion in medicine, working with others in this place. Very truthful, real conversations. And again, not always. Of course, there's the practical day-to-day conversations that would need to be had too. But this was, I felt like I was able to express my fullest self as not just a physician, but as a human being.
Yeah, it is. It's a true blessing to work. It sounds like such a paradox when I say it, but it is a true blessing to work with people who are near the end of their lives. For me, it makes me realize that life is short and precious. You know, whether you got 2 years to go or 52 years to go, there is a limit to our life. And you know, the other true blessing is a lot of the masks fall off for people. And then, just as you said, you know, it's real conversations and real people and real issues, and that's where I get a lot of nourishment out of my work in the day-to-day. And then, can you tell a little bit of the story around your attraction to Inspire Health and you know, how that manifested in your life?
Yes, I'd love to. I was working in a full-service family practice, and what that means is taking care of people across the lifespan, so delivering babies and taking care of people on a daily basis in office, but also admitting my patients through hospital and supporting people at their end of life and through grief and loss. And I had decided that even though I so appreciated my work with my patients and my work in general, the actual pace of being up all night delivering babies and then coming back into my office, seeing sometimes upwards of 40 people, just didn't feel like physician heal thyself. I didn't feel like I was nourishing myself and taking care of myself to the degree that I could. So I was actually contemplating a change. I was contemplating perhaps even a career change. I just absolutely opened myself up to possibility and what the next phase of my life and my career would look like. And it was a very, this knowing that I was going to make a change came to me one morning during a prayerful meditation. I just knew something was going to change. And within a very short time, I got a phone call from a physician who was working at Inspire Health who let me know that there was an opening. And I actually hadn't heard of Inspire Health before. But the moment that I stepped through the door and experienced the healing environment that is so beautifully and consciously cultivated here, and I took a program with them, I just remember actually weeping. I'm smiling now, but I just remember sitting on the side and actually crying to a colleague and just saying, "Oh my gosh, this is why this is why I went into medicine.
Mm.
This is, there was just a felt sense of knowing that this is how I can contribute to the greatest degree that I could. So it wasn't very long afterwards until I made a move to Inspire Health, and this has been my full-time practice for a long time now.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful story. Maybe you could just describe, because you said beautifully and consciously create the atmosphere, that healing atmosphere. And I've had the immense pleasure of visiting Inspire Health, and I know for one thing that everybody actually sits down together at 8:30 in the morning for 10 or 15-minute meditation, gets into that kind of healing space, and then people connect. They share a little bit of their lives at that point, and that's the starting point of the day. And so I just think that's absolutely wonderful. There's so much that the conventional medical system could learn about that particular approach. But maybe you can just describe some of the other things that Inspire Health does to facilitate a healing atmosphere and in a sense to support the people that are working within that atmosphere.
Yes, I'd love to. Well, as you mentioned, our morning meditation is so foundational. It's a time for us to, as Tim so beautifully invited us into this afternoon, just a space of connection with our body, with the earth, with our breath, with this moment, with compassion and love, and a time of centering and a time of connecting, not only inside ourselves, but with one another in circles. So all of our physicians and allied health professionals and support team, we sit in circle together and meditate, as you said, for 10 or 15 minutes together. And then we also have, we cultivate our physical healing environment by being in a beautiful space together and having soft lighting and plants and beautiful views out our windows and either silence or soft music. But most importantly, I think that the conscious commitment of the patients and their families who come through here and just have this inspiration to learn and to learn new things and to grow and transform and connect, and their vulnerability and their willingness to move through their vulnerability, we believe very much consciously contributes to this healing environment. They sort of, as we like to talk about, they create an easier path for the next people who come through. When people are brave enough to work through their challenges, it makes it easier for the next person who comes along. And honestly, and Rob, thank you for saying that you've noticed. It's amazing how many people walk in here and say, "Oh, it feels good in here. It feels really good in here."
Yeah, and it certainly does feel good. I mean, I don't know if you want to philosophize, because in some sense this gets out of the kind of the standard Western perspective that, it's just all physical, but I actually believe that there's something energy, there's some type of consciousness that actually has a physical presence there, and that we can, through meditation, through prayer, through setting good intention, we actually have an influence on that consciousness or energy. In the same way at the start of the weekend retreat, when people are really listening and really caring for each other, that actually creates an environment or a cocoon of this kind of lively, energetic atmosphere or feeling. I'm not sure how to describe that. It's remarkable when you've actually experienced it. But I'm just wondering, how do you understand that? Or can you put a theory or some ideas around what's happening there?
Yes, well, I'm with you. It's both very juicy to explore, but also somewhat challenging to put words to, isn't it? Yeah. Certainly, I agree with what you said. Gosh, people coming together not just for their own exploration, but to support one another. There's something that's just so inspiring and so when two or more are gathered. I mean, there's just so many instances and so many examples. I was just co-facilitating our 2-day program last week where people come in and learn to support themselves through nutrition and exercise and meditation and prayer. And gosh, the love in that room after such a short time period, just people feeling and creating an atmosphere where they feel inspired to share who they are They're not holding back. They're not keeping a stiff upper lip. They're not, there's all those phrases around nowadays about keeping calm and carry on. People are being real and being very honest with themselves and with one another. And there's an energy of support and release and connection and community and, frankly, letting go. Allowing all of our emotions to bubble up and come forward, not just the so-called positive ones, but allowing ourselves to be angry, to be frustrated, to be grief-stricken, and to, frankly, be absolutely in the unknown, be overwhelmed and feel, in fear and vulnerability. And when people witness that in one another, there's this incredible resonance that happens where other people in the room allow themselves to feel what they're feeling, and there's just there's a grace and a beauty and a letting go and an it's okay that happens in those moments that that so supports the welcome. And I don't just mean the welcome mat that's at the front door. I mean that depth of welcoming whoever we are. That unconditional care and love is present and it's palpable.
Yeah, and it's the depth of coming home, coming truly home to ourselves.
Yes.
I think, because you're describing really what's happening near the end of a weekend retreat as well, and I think some people for the first time in their whole lives are able to experience a depth of love and connection and just wonder, awe, mystery that they've never felt before in their lives. And it's sounding like you're able to do that almost on a day-to-day, one-on-one in that group scenario. It's very impressive.
Oh, it's such wonderful work. It's such a blessing to be with folks in their exploration and in their wonder. I often wonder, people say how grateful they are, but I'm just as grateful as they are. Just being with one another is such a rich blessing.
The other aspect of it is that we need to take care of ourselves. So without our own kind of depth and self-care, it's hard to kind of maintain that presence and space. I'm just wondering if you want to share what you do to keep your life balanced, because I can hear that your work is very, very rich, but I'm also know from experience that also takes energy, and that giving energy needs to be replaced in some way or form.
Yes, thank you. I'd be delighted to talk about my the other aspects of my life. Music is a very big part of my life. I've often said that if I ever had to have surgery, I wonder if instead of blood, music would be present, because it's in the heart and soul of who I am. I grew up with music, and I've always played piano and sung, and these days I'm actually writing a bit of music and some songs, and mostly playing them at home for my own family, but just so enjoying spending that time. And I also dance. I've been dancing I guess it's university. And would you believe I've had the same teacher since I moved to British Columbia in 1998. She's actually one of the reasons that I moved out here, this particular teacher. So I've been dancing with her several times a week for all that time, and it's I just have a ball. It's a time to let go and be free in my body and free in the music, and it really does help recharge and nourish me, body, mind, and spirit.
Wow. And do you want to reflect on your being a yoga instructor and how you integrate that into the work that you do in the day-to-day, or how that prepares you as a person to be in the space of facilitating healing?
Yes. Well, for me, yoga, for many, yoga may bring up pictures of the physical postures, and that is indeed a part of my practice. But the part of my practice from the yoga teacher training that I do on a daily basis is my meditation and my breathing practice. And so this is how I start every day, is in a time of silent contemplation and connection with my breath. And the freedom and the peace that we can connect with inside of ourselves. And this very much actually is woven into probably every interaction that I have during the day, not just with patients, but with our team as well. And I'm fortunate that it's not just me, because even with my practice, sometimes I forget to breathe. And it's wonderful that we remind one another. It's another way that we create this healing environment together, not just for our patients, but for one another, just to remind ourselves to come back home to the body, and come back to the breath, and come back to this moment.
And can you just flush that out just a little bit? You know, you might be at a meeting and suddenly things are happening very quickly, and suddenly you realize my body's feeling a little bit more tense. What happens? What do you do? What's the kind of practical skill that you could offer people in that moment?
Oh, okay, great. Well, one of the things that I find is born out of a daily practice or a regular practice of meditation is that noticing when we're not breathing, or when our breath has become shallow, or when our muscles have become quite tense. So certainly more nowadays than before I started my yoga and meditation practice. I actually notice that I'm out of alignment in some way, that I've tensed up my shoulders or my jawline, or I've tightened up my belly. And so, and in those moments, what I'll do is I'll breathe, or I'll breathe out very particularly. I think many of us have a tendency in life to, if we're busy people, to, take in and take in and take in and forget to let go. So sometimes we'll pause in the middle of a meeting. Yes, we can all take a breath to that. We'll pause in the middle of a meeting if one of us, because we work so closely together and we're all committed to taking care of ourselves in these ways. At the level of our board as well, because we're a nonprofit, we'll just, if one person notices that things are getting a little heated, although that could be fun too, but if it's getting a little heated to the way of tenseness, then what we'll do is just remind one another, let's take a break, let's take a few breaths together, and we'll sit in quiet contemplation for a few moments and then just reinvigorate. We like to, as much as we can, stay in what we often refer to as the we space, the space where we feel connected, and we're not just up in our head with creative ideas, but we're actually grounded in our body and in our being. So we do remind ourselves, but we also remind one another, and take a few breaths or even a few minutes to reconnect.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that, because it reminded me I'm in this kind of excited space of being in an interview, and my body's a little bit tense, and so I'm just kind of relaxed there. I had a few good deep breaths, so really thank you so much for settling me down as well. So I really appreciate that. You also have a Christian background. Are you able to bring that kind of level of spirituality into your work in the day-to-day, or into the rest of your life in some sense? You want to share some aspect of that with us, whatever feels right for you?
Sure, I'd love to. It's interesting. I don't know. With the yoga, I'm more clear that I bring the reminder to meditate and breathe into the room. With my Christianity, I'm not 100% sure how I bring it in, except that it just, as I was saying earlier, it sort of just animates me and who I am in the world. So the love that shines through me, the gratitude that I have for my knowing of the infinite, to the degree that any of us know any of that, just infuses my conversation with folks. I think when sometimes it'll come through when somebody is feeling stuck, or in their own way feeling like something is finite, or they're feeling like they're backed into a corner. There's something that, whether it's through words, but just through my knowing, my felt sense of the truth that there is life in this moment, and there is life beyond this moment, and there is life beyond this life. Somehow that my patients do comment on it sometimes, that they can't put a finger on it, or it may not have said it through words, but somehow they know that, or feel reassured that there is more, that we can surrender to the mystery, and that's a choice that we have in any given moment.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It does make me reflect as well. I do set a kind of Christian aspiration, even though I may not call myself a Christian, and Christian aspiration each morning to bring God's love into this world. In a sense, I just want people to feel that incredible sense of love and peace and joy that I feel within my heart. I just want to share that with the world. And so I do think it has kind of a Christian background and Christian feeling. But my experience as well is, sitting at the bedside of somebody who's really looking at a very, very difficult challenge, and they can palpate my presence, they can palpate the love that I have in my heart, and suddenly there's more space within the room, and suddenly it's a possibility, oh my God, I can experience love and joy despite the incredible challenges of this moment. And again, that's not happening verbally as much as some type of presence, some type of love within my heart that I'm bringing into the room, and I don't even know what I'm saying or what I'm doing, but somehow they can palpate that sense of spaciousness.
Thank you, Rob, for putting that into words. I'm sometimes challenged to do so, but yes, exactly. I think that, and I hope that my love and my compassion do shine through. Yeah,
it's pretty obvious to me. It's a natural thing for you. The other kind of question that I have on the day-to-day is this issue around healing. And how do we facilitate healing? Or what's your, maybe even take a very concrete example of someone who heals in some way. And sometimes it seems so pedestrian to me. Somebody comes to a weekend retreat, and at the end of the retreat they say something like, now I can say to my family that I have a cancer diagnosis. And they've been through a huge sense of healing, a huge sense of relief, and yet it just sounds so kind of minuscule, if judging from outside. But can you offer something around how you facilitate healing beyond the fact that we can do all sorts of these things and allow the body to naturally heal itself? But maybe talk about levels of healing or some philosophy that you use around facilitating those deeper transformations.
What an incredible thing to talk about. I just feel so fortunate to be exploring this with you and Tim today. Gosh, I'm struck with so many memories of so many moments, as you said, that may seem quote-unquote small, and yet can have such profound effects in a person's life and in their family and in their community. I'm thinking of one gentleman who came in, and actually, excuse me, before I even get into examples, just to touch on the profound healing that can happen on so many levels, Rob, as you mentioned. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes we can, whether it's through cancer treatments or through removing some kinds of barriers or even foods that we're eating that don't work for our body, there is physical healing that's possible. And sometimes physical healing is not possible, and there's always room for emotional and mental and spiritual healing. And sometimes it can feel scary, but all those levels of healing are so profound. And so I'm thinking of one example, although there are many. I'm thinking of one example of a gentleman who came in with his wife, and he was the one with the cancer diagnosis, and his wife came with him to the appointment. And he was actually estranged from his adult children. He had some I guess, displayed some behaviors within the family in the past, and his children had chosen not to speak to him anymore. And it had been years, and he still couldn't understand why they weren't wanting to speak to him. And he wasn't reaching out to them either, and they didn't know that he had cancer, and didn't know that he really, really loved them and wanted to connect with them. And honestly, it was just an honor to listen and to hear his pain and his regret and his remorse and his defenses and all of that. And as he continued to pour these things forth and, as I say, lay them down, something new started to emerge. Just the possibility of perhaps a phone call to his adult children. And he was scared, he was embarrassed, he was feeling ashamed because, of course, all the reasons that they weren't speaking to him started to reveal themselves to him right in the room in front of me. And he worked through a number of so-called skeletons in his closet right here in the room, and both he and his wife were quite full of emotion and tears. And when I saw him the next time, I almost didn't recognize him. He'd gone from a very strained, furrowed, hardened countenance and even look to a softer, more open stance and energy. At least that was my sensing. And his wife was in as more sort of trembly, grateful tears this time. And what he and they shared with me was that he not only had reached out to his children, but they were actually coming over for dinner once a week now and meeting as a family. And I could actually go into tender tears myself just remembering that shift in that family. And it wasn't to do with the cancer, although many people do, and I'm sure from your work as well, talk about how cancer and any life-threatening illness or any trauma in our lives can catalyze movement of some kind, a willingness. It can sometimes bring up grand courage to face something that perhaps has been swept away or that we've been distracted from over the years. So that's just one example of, for me, a true transformation that took place for this gentleman and his family.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. Yeah. Very beautiful.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So many levels. Tim, do you have any reflections or questions or comments? I'm just hoping to have you add your insights to just this amazing center, an amazing person as well. So go ahead.
Yeah. Something that I'm very inspired by is the Inspire Health. You have this community, and like you said, that if you're taking care of each other and you're taking care of your relationships, then the people that come into the center because they have cancer feel something good is there. And I think, can you say a little bit more about that? Because I really believe that that's so powerful, that when the healing practitioners are healing themselves, then the whole environment is uplifted.
Oh yes, thank you. Well, one of our doctors said to me just recently, I just realized that I have been in relationship with my husband for, I think, over 25 years, and we work so lovingly and so carefully on our relationship. And she said, I feel like I'm married to all of you as well, because we also work so joyfully and dedicatedly. We dedicate ourselves to one another and to, yes, thank you, Tim, the closeness and the openness of our relationships. I know there's a saying in Zen Buddhism, there are no small things. Because, of course, as we know, if we leave something small, it can grow and gather momentum. And so we have one of our agreements as a team at Inspire Health is to not let anything grow. We connect with one another about whatever it is that may have been a communication mishap or a misunderstanding. We communicate by the end of the day as a commitment to ourselves and to one another, so that it doesn't grow. So yes, I feel that the team and the community and our own healing is absolutely essential to really what our one of our doctors and our co-founders says, to model this for others, so that people can see, this is what's possible. Yes. And feel inspired. That's the ripple effect that happens.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I sense as well, as we talked about at the beginning, that the pure intention that was set to begin with to create this center has come into manifestation, like you were saying, that there's a constant regenerating of that intention for people to heal and to create this possibility, you know? Do you recognize that?
Indeed, thank you. We often call it the founding impulse that the two doctors, Dr. Gunn and Dr. Rogers, 18 years ago now, brought forth, which is to connect, to support people to connect with themselves, one another, and the earth. Mm-hmm. And yes, indeed, we have our what we call our cultural agreements, and we commit to them and recommit to them, and nobody's perfect, but we absolutely do our best to support our own healing and to live true to these values moment to moment. And yes, so it just I loved what you said. I guess we recreate it in each moment. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think, you know, people who work in conventional healthcare, it's such an inspiration for you guys to offer that example, that it is possible, and you're not foregoing any kind of conventional medical treatments, but you're adding to that all of this extra support and love in your environment, and it really makes a difference. You know, I think that it's just, yes, we can. You know, this is, you know, and it's. I think that the more that can be, yeah, I hope that people who are working in, because I hear a lot of stories. I work with a lot of people in healthcare who are experiencing the opposite, where they don't feel supported by their supervisors and the administration, and there's a feeling of pressure and never enough time and too much to do, and feeling burdened by the job. And you know, there's a lot of, I think especially people who work shifts and nurses and so forth feel burdened and overwhelmed sometimes. And I think that healthcare, you know, we need to establish that sense of the well-being of the practitioners.
Yes.
Then you have more to give.
Indeed. I have a wish in my own heart, and that is that all of our colleagues would come and participate with us. Mm-hmm. You know, we've had a few colleagues, physicians and nurses and therapists, etc., over the years with their own cancers who've come in, and some who this was a natural, easy choice for them, that working with their body naturally and working with in a mind-body-spirit approach was natural for them, but some who this was absolutely new. Yeah. And who were quite humbled by, oh, this is something that frankly they wish they'd known about, not just Inspire Health, but they wish they'd known how to. It's not something that we unfortunately learn very much of in medical school, how to take care of ourselves and honor this level of empowerment and engagement, and how to infuse that into the day-to-day when there are also important interventions and medical treatments that need to happen. Mm-hmm. How to do both, and where this way of being with folks is not considered alternative, but it's just part of care.
Necessary.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It really is necessary.
Yeah. It's totally integrated to how we take care of ourselves, and you know, how we extend our love and, you know, precision in our technique to others. There's no doubt. Janice, I'm wondering if you can offer us a poem that inspires you, or that you use in some way or form in your life.
I'd love to. Thank you, Rob. One of my favorite poems, or favorite poets, is Mary Oliver. She's a contemporary American poet, and I actually often read poems to my patients, whether it's in one-on-one or in group settings, and sometimes these words they just touch us on a different level, don't they?
Yeah.
So this is a particular favorite of mine called Wild Geese.
Mm.
You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
Thank you.
Thank you. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's that simple. Not always easy, but it is that simple. Just to let our body love what it loves. Move towards what calls to our heart.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Really just sink that in, let that one sink in. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Janice, we were going to talk about this idea of bringing our conditions, our past lives into a cancer diagnosis. We had just last week interviewed this wonderful woman, Nikki DeLester, who had a genetic cancer predisposition. Her mother was diagnosed with cancer when Nikki was 5 years old, and her mom actually died of cancer about 20 years later as well. So Nikki kind of grew up, with this issue of thinking a cancer diagnosis would come to her someday, and actually it did when she was about 40 years old, 42 years old. And she said in that moment, it's as if she regressed. She went right back to being 5 years old, and she said for the first day she just snuggled in her bed and put the covers over her head and just kind of cried like a 5-year-old. And it's not an uncommon scene that we naturally regress back to a time in our lives under great stress, and those traumas from childhood can come up and so on. So I just want to start that conversation with that story, and maybe you can offer an experience or an insight around the issue that we're human. We have these burdens, we have these difficulties that we carry with us through our lives, and in some sense how to work with that. How can we work towards transformation? How can we work towards healing when it's just the truth? That's how we feel in that moment.
Yes, it's gosh, it's a blessing. It's also such a privilege to be with folks when they're being really honest with themselves as to, again, for that patient to share, for that person to share, this is what happened for me. I was in bed with the covers up over, maybe even holding a teddy bear. I mean, a real felt sense of the vulnerability of a young child. And as you said, the trauma. So just wanting to acknowledge and honor all of our moments like that. Certainly, cancer is, as I mentioned, like many traumas in our lives, a life-threatening illness. Boy, I know that it would be challenging for many to see it this way, but many of our patients are able to say, "Wow, this has been what do they say, a gift. They say that it can be a gift for them.
Or a present wrapped in wire, barbed wire.
Yes, exactly. I mean, a beast, a monster, an absolutely terrorizing, overwhelming experience, and a gift. That incredible paradox, where when the truth of our mortality, or we move into that deep, deep place of terror, it does bring us often. As we all know, not always, but often patients do get catalyzed or triggered back to childhood, or back to just simply a dark place from the past that perhaps hasn't had the opportunity to fully come out into the light in a way that is deeply healing, where we can, like the example I gave of that gentleman, where he brought out what I sometimes call these crumpled pieces of paper that have been perhaps kept deep inside. They, one by one, they started to come to the surface, so we can explore these things. And it is challenging. It can be downright terrorizing and excruciatingly painful. I mean, I have witnessed just absolute terror and devastation, and that dark night of the soul, that or however one would word it, that beast that moves through, it can sweep through with healing energy as well. It may not feel like it in the moment, because it's downright scary and painful in so many different ways. And yet, if we have the willingness, or some of my patients say, Janice, I don't even think I have willingness, it's just I don't have a choice right now, it's just coming through. Here we go. And to support folks and gently remind them that this is what their soul is calling them to do at this time. This is what their body and their being is expressing and allowing at this time. Please, let's just witness this together. Let's see what comes forth, and even perhaps what we can learn as we go. And there are times I have witnessed where just having I know I'm a professional, but just to be that friend along the way, to be that companion, to be that support, and to have someone with them who is willing to be with them in those vulnerable, really scary places that they haven't revealed to not only someone in the helping profession, but perhaps anyone in their family, and not even fully revealed to their own heart.
Right.
So it can be such a tremendous time of healing. And Rumi, another one of my favorite poets, talks about I don't remember the exact words, but life being a guest house. Right. Every morning a new arrival, and whatever comes through. I mean, I think, bless us, we often want to just welcome the joy and the peace and the love and the laughter, but boy, sometimes we learn the challenging way how to welcome and be with the anger, the shame, the dark thoughts, and to have someone that can, again, be a support along the way, and to support that person when they're looking that beast in the eye, I think can go a long way. That sense of being with can go a long way.
Agreed. I think what happens sometimes is that it's so overwhelming that people aren't willing to go there at all, and so that first step of honesty and authenticity, and in some sense that takes incredible courage just to experience those overwhelming emotions as they are. And then I've just tried to say to people, it's normal, this is natural, this is expected. Anybody with your history, with your genetics, would have had exactly the same reaction as you're having right now. And so that brings up that feeling of self-love and self-care. But that's really, really, really hard when we're consumed by the incredible fire and the incredible emotions and so on. And anyways, just my heart goes out to people in that state, because it's hard for them to see or to have confidence that there actually can be transformation, that you can actually grow through incredibly painful feelings. So.
Yes. I also find, as we've been talking about, community makes such a profound difference in those moments. You know, when I'm sure, as you know from your times working with folks in group settings, supporting one another. I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only one going through this depth of darkness.
Mm.
And you know, we in one sense, we all have of course, our unique story and our unique path. And on the other hand, as one of my teachers likes to remind us, there are no new stressful thoughts. We all, you know, to greater or lesser degree, and perhaps associated with different experiences, but we all experience these things. We're not alone in this, and it's as much as it's an honor and a privilege. It's not about me with my patient. It's about it's also about the people that they associate with in community, and the support and the love and the gentleness and the compassion.
Right. And I guess the take-home point for me around that is, first of all, the honesty and the courage to be oneself, but then to find that wise ear, that wise soul, somebody, at least somebody in your life who can simply listen and doesn't have to correct the problem and can just be there for you as a person who's going through the incredible, difficult experience. Yeah. Tim, do you want to reflect on this process of, you know, cancer diagnosis suddenly brings up into consciousness the incredible feelings, incredible traumas from the past, and how we can work with that?
Yeah. Well, I'm very impressed, Janice, with what you've talked about, and that there's many times in our groups we found someone who, as Rob was saying, who their mother died when they were age 12 or 7 or 10, and then receiving a diagnosis oneself, there's this flashback to that time, and that was all that unfinished business, and all the child was not really ready to accommodate and to deal with all of that intensity of emotion of a parent's death with cancer or a parent's cancer. And so there's a whole lot of catching up to do. And I do think it's really great that there's professionals who are aware of that kind of regression happens, because I think once people understand that there's something that we actually know that this happens, and we acknowledge it, and then we say, you know, this is normal, and you can get through this. It's very helpful for them just to have that frame of reference that gives them an awareness that I'm experiencing this, other people experience this, there's a way to get through it, and there's people here that can help me get through it. So.
Yes, I agree. That gesture, that expression, letting folks know that this is normal, and as you said, Rob, to be expected, and yeah. It does support them, I think, to get some ground under their feet.
Yeah.
Yes, and so I think just having even that term, dark night of the soul, although it doesn't resonate for everyone, but
yeah.
Okay, this is something that, you know, that folks go through, and that some of the greatest you know, philosophers and spiritual contemplators have gone through as well.
Yeah.
And so you know, just supporting folks to recognize that, I absolutely agree, gets them back on the ground.
Yeah.
Are there other things that, I mean, seeing a professional, I think, is really the key part here. So having somebody within your life, that wise friend or, you know, mother or somebody who you can go to, and seeing a professional, I think, is extremely important to people as well. So people such as your colleagues in Inspire Health and yourself. Are there other ways that people can facilitate healing when they're feeling so incredibly raw and vulnerable, and aren't themselves, aren't their usual selves, because they're bringing those memories and those emotions up into their consciousness.
Yes, I agree with finding someone that just is able to listen, a family member or a friend or mentor, and certainly a professional in moments of crisis. And I do find that recommending that folks spend time in nature can be so healing, whether that's a barefoot walk on the beach, or whether that's leaning up against a tree, just really, again, feeling of the ground under our feet and under our body. And I often remind folks in those moments that, nature goes through tumult. Nature goes through times of incredible change and upheaval, and, forest fires and hurricanes and tsunamis. And, patients often will acknowledge that tsunami. Yes, this is what this is. It's nothing less than a tsunami. This is not a fine April shower. And so just connecting with nature, I find very helpful, and also supporting folks with whatever kind of supportive practice works for them. I know we have, for example, emotional freedom technique classes here where people tap on their body on acupuncture points, and that can help support just bringing the level of anxiety down from sometimes what feels like a 10 out of 10 down to a level that's manageable, so folks can move through their day. And also supporting folks to do whatever feels right. Well, I used to meditate, but now I've just got this one prayer that keeps just coming through my head. Well, all right, let's just go with that. Or vice versa. Or there's one particular friend, and only one friend, who I want to see right now. Well, then why don't you just see that friend? So supporting folks to do because often in times of crisis, even in the overwhelm, we have a very clear felt sense, I find, listening to folks, where I know what I want and I know what I don't want. Even if it's only one or two things, I get really, people get really clear on that. So supporting them in that, and supporting their questions, and reminding them that there's no hurry. Of course, when we're feeling that overwhelmed, we want to hurry through it, but there's no hurry. We can take our time. We don't need to run out and do another workshop or read a fourth self-help book. We can just take our time and rest and walk in nature and be very gentle with ourselves. And so those are some of the thoughts and recommendations that I would have at this time.
Wow.
Or at times like that.
Yeah, great wisdom. A day at a time is what I think about, is that we don't have to feel all our life at once. This is a normal process, and in some sense it's like grief, right? So we're grieving, and the grieving process takes time. Something's coming up, something's transforming, and healing takes time. And we don't. I mean, in some sense, we can kind of even reframe that to say, this is the pain that I'm feeling is the natural healing that's happening. That's the movement here. So, Tim, do you want to offer some practical ideas around what people can do to work with the incredibly overwhelming emotions?
Well, I thought that was a terrific list, actually. It's very good. But then I'm coming back to your passion of music. And I think people who have a practice of music, playing music, and working with music, and using music to bring up catharsis and sadness, and allowing yourself to cry, just allowing yourself to listen to something sad and let it come. And I think people can give themselves the time to feel their grief. So much our society wants to resist that and to hold back on the grief. And if we can create opportunities in situations where it's okay to grieve, it's okay to release what needs to be released, and to feel the sadness around that, and to open your heart to that. And I really love your idea of being in nature, and I think that there's formal meditation practice, and then there's all the other ways that we can bring mindfulness into everyday life which is like walking in nature, fishing, doing the dishes, taking a shower. Everything that we do, we can bring that mindful attention and that sense of I'm loving myself right here and feeling the earth and enjoying life on some level, even though I'm going through this intense transition or this pain. You know, and I think I like what you said too. You know, gentleness and time. Our society is so pressured with respect to time, and that when we do need to go through that psychological healing or that spiritual soul healing, we need to kind of disconnect from that busyness a bit, to withdraw. And I think giving people permission to do that, to step outside of the merry-go-round of the accomplishment, and speed, and to be able to do that self-reflecting. And sometimes it takes a lot of support for people to actually make that choice, because we're so conditioned to be achieving, you know. And to break, I've been working with some people who are very high achievers, and they get cancer, and then want to get right back to work, but then that's not really working that well, and so they have to take more time to heal, and to cry, and to feel what they're feeling, and to connect with their family, and to walk alone on the beach, like you said, you know. And so giving ourselves permission to do that.
Indeed.
It's part of why I love the podcast. So much wisdom. Thank you so much, both Tim and Janice, for just right from the heart and right from the lived wisdom of working with people there. So, Janice, I'm wondering if you can offer our closing meditation in whatever way is best for you. It can be long, can be short, whatever flows for you now.
I'd be delighted to. Thank you.
Great.
Oh, well, let's all make sure that we are connecting with our breath, and in particular our out breath. Oh, surrendering, releasing, and letting go. And if we feel comfortable doing so, we'll close our eyes and notice the floor, notice the earth under our feet, and notice the chair, and notice the earth support under our bums and our hips and our legs. And using our mind's eye to come back to the breath, letting the breath flow easily in and out. Perhaps a little bit deeper than usual, just for the first few or next few breaths, to really notice that flow. And then having a felt sense of breathing into our heart. So many words, so many songs written about our heart. Perhaps in this moment we're feeling heartbroken or full-hearted. Just breathing it all in, whatever we're feeling. Giving ourselves the permission to be just so tender and grateful with ourselves in this moment, like we would with a newborn child. It can feel challenging in moments, But if we take a breath or a few, we might be able to find our gratitude. Some of us may have several things that we're grateful for in this moment, and they easily come to mind. Some of us might be challenged to find one thing. But if nothing else, we might be grateful for this breath. The breath of life that we share with all breathing beings. The breath that, when we connect with it, with our mind, brings all of us into this moment, this precious moment. Let's sit in silence for just a minute or two together, and then I'm going to sing just a short song from my yoga tradition. May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Taking a few more breaths, connecting with our gentleness in our heart, our compassion for ourselves and one another, and the love and the peace that are present for us in this moment. We can open our eyes. And I will say thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had a bit of a transmission from your yoga teacher, actually, quite seriously. So thank you very much. That put me into a different space, so wonderful. What can I say? Thank you so much for being yourself and offering your great wisdom and love. It's really healing just for me to have that conversation. So I so appreciate this, Janice. And Tim, as always, talk about married couples. I think Tim and I are married. So it's wonderful to be with you. And we'll see you in about 5 days' time. And I just want to offer those who are listening to the podcast an opportunity to send us your feedback in any way or form. If you have a guest that you'd like for us to interview, that'd be great too. It's info@healingandcancer.org. And you can definitely visit Janice's great institution, inspirehealth.ca. Highly recommend it. So thank you, and namaste to all our viewers and listeners. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oops.